Well, Peter, first of all, thank you for that very kind introduction. And it was Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin who told me when I was appointed to this job, he called me and said, "You've now got the toughest job in government, but it's also the best job in government." And he was absolutely right. Ministers, ambassadors, members of Parliament, members of the congressional delegation, General Eyre, members of our Canadian Armed Forces, Deputy Matthews, distinguished guests, welcome to you all. To those who are visiting to Canada, you are most welcome, and we are very honored. And I also wanted to acknowledge Peter MacKay and his leadership in bringing us here to Halifax, because it's a great place to be. Well done, Peter. I'm very honored by the opportunity. It truly is a privilege to join Peter as my co-host to welcome you all to the Halifax International Security Forum, which is taking place on the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And as Peter mentioned, this is my first trip to the Halifax Forum. But I want to assure you all that the reputation of this extraordinary event well precedes it. It's a reputation dating back 15 years as the world's foremost security conference for democracies. Peter, you thanked a lot of people. Allow me the opportunity to say thank you to you. You have kept the idea of this forum alive and prospering and relevant and important for 15 years. And over that 15 years, I believe you have contributed very significantly to an important dialogue among like-minded nations. And as we've seen, as the video showed us, the global security challenges have evolved rather significantly over the past 15 years. We're seeing increasing threats to the rules-based international order. We're seeing rapid technological advances. We're seeing how climate change is increasing demand for our Canadian Armed Forces here at home and abroad. And of course, we're seeing, for the last 15 months of war in Ukraine, conflict in the Middle East, and rising tensions in the Indo-Pacific. Now, we are very fortunate in Canada to be some considerable distance from many of these conflicts. But as our world is becoming increasingly interconnected, we cannot benefit solely from our isolation from those conflicts, because as Peter indicated, we all have a responsibility. And these global challenges have a direct impact on Canadians. The impact on our security, on our families abroad, on our costs of living, and on our future, the future world that we will leave to our kids and our grandkids. In challenging times like these, Canada's position must remain clear. Freedom matters. Democracy matters. Sovereignty matters. And as the international rule-based order that has kept us safe is being challenged, those rules matter. Freedom must prevail. And for our citizens, we have an obligation to strengthen those rules and to uphold that order. I am convinced that together we can strengthen these international rules that keep us all safe, and we can meet the security challenges of today and of tomorrow. But let's be frank, we have a great deal of work to do. And that requires remarkable alliances like NATO and NORAD. It requires personnel, readiness, and it's going to require significant investment. It requires frank discussion that we have and what we have come to expect here in Halifax as the leading security conference of democracies. A month and a half ago on October 7th, Israel was brutally attacked by the terrorist organization Hamas. Approximately 1,200 Israeli citizens were slaughtered, and over 200 Israeli and foreign nationals were taken hostage, including citizens of many of the countries represented here today. We've all seen the heartbreaking footage from Israel over the last month. Families torn apart, parents who've lost their young children, innocent people kidnapped during a day of celebration. And I want to be very clear. Canada unequivocally condemns this terror attack, and we unwaveringly support Israel's right to defend itself in accordance with international law. Allow me to reiterate our Prime Minister's call for Hamas to immediately release all hostages held in Gaza. And last week, the House of Commons, and as Peter mentioned, many of my parliamentary colleagues from all parties are here today, we unanimously passed a motion calling upon the same effect. The price of justice cannot be the suffering of innocent civilians, and the protections of civilians remains paramount. But Hamas must stop using Palestinian civilians as human shields. And as we've all seen the terrible images of humanitarian situation in Gaza, we are making every effort to provide humanitarian assistance. We reiterate the need to ensure safe and unimpeded access to life-saving humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza, and that aid can flow safely. Since October of this year, the Canadian Armed Forces, and I want to say thanks, General, have been there to assist Canadians in the region. Our military evacuated over 1,600 Canadians and permanent residents from Israel. And we were also assisted in the evacuation of 360 Canadians from Gaza. And should the regional situation escalate, we are also prepared to evacuate Canadians from Lebanon if that's what's required. Hundreds of Canadian Armed Forces personnel are deployed in the region, and a task force headquarters has been set up in Cyprus. Canada will continue to support a two-state solution so that both Israel and Palestinians can live in a lasting peace. In Ukraine, members of the Armed Forces of Ukraine continue to fight for Ukraine's freedom in the face of Russia's illegal and unprovoked war. Ukraine did not ask for this war. They did not provoke this war, but Ukraine must win this war. To strengthen Ukraine's position on the battlefield, our country, like many like-minded countries, have made significant investments in military aid to Ukraine and other financial aids that that country is going to need to prevail in everything from tanks and armored vehicles to howitzers and ammunition. We've also been fortunate since 2015 to be involved in an initiative to train Ukraine's military. I had the opportunity, an extraordinary opportunity, to visit the UK and to go to Camp Lyd, where Canadian Armed Forces members are working alongside their British counterparts in training Ukrainian soldiers to be better prepared to survive the rigors and the risks of the battlefield. Watching the interaction between our Armed Forces members and those Ukrainian citizens was an inspiration. But it reminds us all of the importance to continue to provide that military assistance to allow Ukraine to protect itself in every way possible. In addition to some of those assistance in training, for example, we are also providing Ukraine with systems to protect it from hostile cyber activity, a new front in the battlefield. And Canada regularly shows intelligence with Ukraine, including information about these cyber threats. As many in this room will know all too well, the cyber domain has become a key battleground in this conflict, and we're making critical contributions and will continue to do so to ensure Ukraine's success. And Ukraine is making progress, but it requires us to work together and to continue our support. As NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has said, we are all paying a price for Russia's war against Ukraine, but the price many of us pay is in money and materiel. The price Ukrainians pay is in blood. And if we let Putin win, all of us, as Peter has said, will pay a much higher price for many, many years to come. We must and we will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes, with whatever is required. As a founding member of NATO, our commitment to collective defense has been and will always be unwavering. Canada is more than doubling its military presence in the alliance's eastern flank, with up to 2,200 troops to be persistently deployed through Operation Reassurance in Latvia. And as many of you are aware, Canada also shares vital cyber data with our NATO allies, including Latvia, where we've deployed military and civilian personnel to help protect critical networks. But we know that more must be done. And even though we are across the Atlantic, we are under no illusions. Europe's security is Canada's security. And given the threats that we currently face, we believe that the NATO alliance and that partnership is more important than ever. I also want to acknowledge Canada must and will do more. In the Indo-Pacific, we also have a great deal of work to do, and as a Pacific nation ourselves, Canada has a deep interest in maintaining a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific, particularly in maintaining the freedom of navigation on international waterways. We know that Canada's participation must move from an episodic presence in the region to a reliable and persistent presence, and that's exactly why we're deploying more ships, aircraft, and personnel to the region. In 2023, for the very first time, Canada deployed 3 warships into the Indo-Pacific. There, they conducted exercises with our allies and our partners, including the United States, South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and others. And I'm proud to say that this additional warship came from right here in Halifax. And whether we were monitoring UN sanctions against North Korea or sailing through the international waters of the Taiwan Strait, partnerships matter. And this forum helps build and maintain those partnerships. And as we operate in the Indo-Pacific, Canada will always defend international rules and engage responsibly. We expect others to do the same. Unfortunately, I have to share with you that in the past few weeks, we have seen unsafe aerial intercepts conducted by the People's Republic of China. On October 16th, a Canadian maritime patrol aircraft monitoring United Nations sanctions against North Korea was unsafely intercepted by a Chinese fighter, which came within 5 meters of our aircraft. And only a few weeks later, on October 29th, another Canadian maritime helicopter had 2 unsafe encounters with Chinese aircraft, one of which launched flares directly in front of our helicopter. These actions put everyone at risk, and we have raised our concerns regarding this behavior in the past. We'll continue to do so, and we will continue to be a presence in the region. Our Indo-Pacific strategy is clear. China increasingly disregards international rules and norms. So Canada will continue to challenge China where we believe it is right, and we will cooperate with China when we must to find solutions to global issues. Canada has been clear in its commitment to our partners in the region, and for example, we are contributing to stability in the Korean Peninsula, and since the Korean War, the Canadian Armed Forces have continuously served in Korea through the United Nations Command to promote peace on the peninsula. And today, I'm very pleased to share with you that the Canadian Armed Forces' very own Lieutenant General Derek McCauley has been named the next Deputy Commander of the United Nations Command in the Republic of Korea. He will officially begin his duties shortly, and this is only the second time Canada has the privilege of participating at that level. We believe the Indo-Pacific strategy is central to our own country's security and prosperity, and I want to assure our allies we'll continue to work with all like-minded partners and allies to build freedom, openness, and stability in the region. And here at home, our Arctic sovereignty is being increasingly challenged by Russia and by China. Just 9 months ago, NORAD played a key role when a Chinese high-altitude surveillance balloon violated the sovereignty of our nation and the United States. And it reminds us all of the centrality of NORAD's security to our people. And as President Biden said when he visited Canada this year, NORAD is an incredible symbol of the faith that we have in one another and trust that we place in each other's capabilities. And to the United States congressional delegation joining us today, let me please say very clearly, we deeply value the unparalleled defense relationship between Canada and the United States, including and especially through NORAD. Canada is making generational investments to help modernize our NORAD capabilities. We're investing over $38 billion over the next 2 decades, but we recognize we must do more. We are starting to see these investments take shape. We're developing a new Arctic over-the-horizon radar system with improved threat detection in the north. At the beginning of this year, our government announced the acquisition of 88 F-35 fighter jets, an investment of $19 billion that I'm sure some would say was well overdue, but we're moving on that. We've closely engaged with our Arctic partners to upgrade our infrastructure so that they can host state-of-the-art fighter jets, and we are working to modernize the Canadian Armed Forces. We're continuing to implement our 2017 defense policy, Strong, Secure, and Engage, and which will increase our defense spending by over 70%. But again, let me say and reassure you all, Canada knows it must do more because the world has changed since 2017. The threat environment has grown significantly, and that's why we must move forward with our defense policy update. We have been engaging with Canadians, with industry, with our allies and our partners to make sure that we get this right. But we also recognize the urgency of those investments and the work that we must do together. We're focusing on capabilities that bring value to Canadians and to our key alliances. And for example, we know that the long-range precision strike capabilities will be essential to NATO. We know that underwater surveillance capabilities and Arctic defense infrastructure matter to NORAD. And we know that tactical aviation capabilities are essential in responding to emergencies here at home. In recent weeks, I've had the opportunity to meet with the aerospace industry, the Canadian Association of Defense and Security Industries, and other industry partners to discuss the defense policy update. I've heard their feedback, and I know that we need to provide you with the clarity and certainty that will enable you to help us. And although we are already investing in major new military capabilities in all domains, again, I will reiterate, additional investments are needed and will occur. We know that we need resources to put behind our aspirations, and as we do all of this, our people remain our #1 priority. And that's exactly why we are implementing Madam Justice Arbour's recommendations to ensure meaningful cultural change in our military. As Canada's Ambassador for Women, Peace and Security, Jacqueline O'Neill, has recently said, while receiving the BIMI Award just last week, diverse groups make better decisions, and when women participate, the outcomes are better. True operational effectiveness occurs when we reduce blind spots on situational awareness. Inclusion matters, respect matters, and we're going to make sure that we create a Canadian Armed Forces that is inclusive and respectful of all men and women who serve. I would like to also, if I may, and Peter's already done this, but I also want to take the opportunity to welcome this year's Peace and Women Fellows, who, as in previous years, take part in this weekend's discussion. Welcome. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to Irene Fellon, Special Representative of the NATO Secretary General for Women, Peace and Security. And finally, if I may, let me say just a few words about our host city, the remarkable city of Halifax. To all Haligonians, it's not an easy word to say, by the way, your city is the beating heart of the defense of Canada. Just over a week ago, 2 Canadian ships returned to their home port here in Halifax after a month-long deployment with NATO in European waters. This morning, I had the opportunity to visit shipbuilders at Irving's Halifax shipyard, just a few kilometers from where we are standing. Halifax shipbuilders have already built and delivered 4 new Arctic and offshore patrol ships to the Navy. 2 more are currently under construction, and they'll soon begin construction on the first of 15 new warships for the Royal Canadian Navy through the Canadian Surface Combatant Project. This will be the largest Canadian shipbuilding initiative since World War II. This project is expected to create and maintain 10,000 jobs over 25 years. It's going to provide our Navy with modern state-of-the-art ships built right here in Canada to enable our Navy to live up to our international commitments. And right next to the Irving shipyard, thousands of civilians and military personnel who go to work every day at the Canadian Forces Base here in Halifax, the home of our Atlantic Fleet and Canada's largest military base. But it needs new facilities to meet the growing demands of our personnel. And so today, I have the opportunity to again announce that we're moving forward to build a brand new $188 million training center here at CFB Halifax. And this center is going to provide Canadian Armed Forces members with the expertise they're going to require in above water, underwater, and maritime air fighting so that they're ready to sail in our incoming fleet of 15 Canadian surface combat ships when they finally come off the line. We've awarded the Ellis Don Corporation with a contract to design this facility, and we're hoping it will be completed by 2029. And for those of you who don't know, that was our Halifax area MPs who were applauding first. This is good news for Halifax, but it's also good news for the Navy. It's good news for the Canadian Armed Forces, because I hope it demonstrates to them that we are prepared to make investments in them, and to provide them with state-of-the-art equipment while they await the arrival of these new ships. Halifax is also home to an impressive defense research and innovation network. It is now the home to Defense Research and Development Agency's Canada's Atlantic facility, which provides world-class expertise in areas like underwater acoustics research. It's home to several universities in Cove, a center of marine technology and innovation. And as my predecessor, Minister Anand, announced last year, Halifax will soon be home to NATO's Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, or DIANA. And today, we are making an additional investment of $26.6 million over 6 years to enable the opening and operation of DIANA's North American regional office here in Halifax. And this investment is going to allow, this investment is going to allow DIANA to open in Halifax by next summer. And it's going to make sure that innovators have the place and the funding required to develop dual-use technologies that will both have civilian and military use. It's good for the Canadian Armed Forces. I hope it's going to be good for all of our efforts. This spring, DIANA launched its first ever competitive call for proposals. Rather proudly, Canada had the second highest number of applications at 211, just a few behind the United States. And we know that by bolstering Canadian innovation and investing in our defense industrial base, we're going to make it better able to support the Canadian Armed Forces and better able to support our allies. And as the nature of conflict changes, we will need to innovate, to adapt across all domains, on sea, on land, in the air, but on cyber and in space. And we need to invest in game-changing technologies like AI and quantum. That's exactly what DIANA is going to do for us here in Halifax. I would take the opportunity to acknowledge Andy Fillmore, who represents the area, for his strong advocacy in getting that here. Canada's proud of being able to support that. We will continue to make major investments here in Halifax and right across the country. And I want to assure you all, Canada understands its responsibility to continue to invest in the Canadian Armed Forces, to make sure it is prepared, resourced, and equipped to do the important job of keeping our country safe. To everyone who is joining us here in Halifax for this remarkable conference, quite clearly we all have a great deal of work to do. And at times like this, conferences like this matter. Threats to international stability are on the rise, and in the face of those threats, we've got to work together. We must learn from each other, and we must share our experiences in the Middle East and in Europe, in the Indo-Pacific, here in North America, and around the globe. We must step up to address these challenges to preserve peace and prosperity for our peoples. Together, I believe and I am confident that we can build a safer world. We can stand up to those who are trying to sow chaos and division. We can ensure that our militaries are ready to face the threats of tomorrow. And ultimately, we can protect and strengthen the rules-based international order that keeps us all safe. We clearly have a lot of work to do. And so with that, delegates of the 2023 Halifax International Security Forum, it is my privilege and pleasure as your co-host to officially hand the floor over to you. Let's get to work.